Welcome to Of Mountains and Men, where we explore mysteries, myths, and legends from the Alps and beyond. In the Alps, winter was never gentle. Snow-closed mountain passes, villages disappeared behind walls of white, and night came early, long before the day had finished its work. Christmas did not arrive with abundance. It arrived with caution. People listened more closely then, to the wind, to the forest, to sounds that did not belong. And on certain nights, when the air grew heavy and the dark felt crowded, they believed something ancient was walking again. On the eve of St. Nicholas, doors were bolted early. Children were warned to mind their behavior. And somewhere beyond the village lights, bells and chains were set to drag around the snow. They knew him by one name: Krampus. Krampus was not a saint, but also he never walked alone. Where St. Nicholas rewarded obedience, Krampus enforced consequence. He was St. Nicholas' shadow, necessary, feared, and understood. Half man, half beast, with horns like a mountain goat, and a face carved from winter itself. Krampus carried birch rods, heavy bells, and iron chains. His tongue hung long, his eyes burned low, and his presence was announced before he was ever seen. The chains were not meant to bind him. They were a warning. If you heard them too late, the warning was already over. Parents told their children that Krampus scraped his claws along doors, peered through frost-covered windows, and sometimes crossed the threshold without knocking. Naughty children were beaten with birch rods. The worst were thrown into baskets or dragged away, into forests, into caves, into places where no one dared follow. Some stories said he carried them only to frighten them. Others ended more quietly, without any explanation. No one asked which version was true. Krampus was said to live high in the mountains, where the snow never melted, and daylight struggled to reach. In caves and ravines, beyond the safety of paths and bells, he waited through the year, until winter loosened the rules of the world. And then, once a year, he returned. On December 5th, fires were lit, masks were carved, furs were worn. Men fastened bells to their waists and became Krampus themselves, not in mockery, but as a ritual. To face a fear was safer than pretending it didn't exist. And so, the bells still ring through the streets. Chains clank, children hide, and the villages remember something it cannot afford to forget. Krampus was never meant to be loved. He was meant to be remembered. For many people outside the Alps, Krampus appears shocking, even absurd. A horned demon marching through the Christmas streets, rattling chains, and frightening children. But Krampus did not begin as a spectacle. The figure appears in Alpine folklore as early as the Middle Ages, especially in what is now known as Austria, Bavaria, South Tyrol, and parts of Slovenia. His name likely comes from the Old High German Kramp, meaning claw. Long before Christianity reached the high valleys, winter spirits were believed to roam freely during the dark nights of the year. These spirits represented chaos, hunger, illness, and death, forces that could not be defeated, only respected. When Christianity spread through the Alps, many of these older beliefs were not erased. They were absorbed and transformed. Krampus became the companion of Saint Nicholas, a compromise between old fear and the new morality. The saint rewarded virtue. Krampus punished neglect. Together, they enforced social order in isolated communities where survival depended on cooperation, obedience, and hard work. Krampusnacht, the Night of Krampus, traditionally takes place on December the 5th. Historically, it was not a parade like nowadays. It was a warning ritual. Masks were frightening by design. Bells were loud to announce danger. Children learned early that winter did not forgive carelessness. Over time, especially in the 19th and 20th centuries, authorities attempted to ban Krampus traditions, calling them pagan and dangerous. But they never fully disappeared. Today's Krampusnacht celebrations, with elaborate mass and dramatic performances, are echoes of something far older. What was once fear has now become theater, but the figure remains. Because Krampus was never about evil. He was about limits. In the Alps, Christmas was not only about generosity and light. It was about order in the dark. And Krampus was a reminder of what happened when order failed. When the bells fade and the chains fall silent, Krampus retreats to the mountains once more. But winter always remembers him.